All right, happy Monday. So this is a bit I wrote. This was on May 27th this year. I titled it The Case for Stacks. Bitcoin Adoption is Breaking Cycles. 1 billion people will own Bitcoin in the next 8 to 12 years, maybe even this cycle. Keep your eye on 1 million Satoshis. Okay. So why am I saying this? Right. So this is all a hypothesis. This is all based off of a few assumptions and then extrapolating off of that. Right. So what are the assumptions? What are we thinking? Why are we even thinking this? So 1 billion people will own Bitcoin. So why am I on this number? Well, it's a number that everyone talks about. Great. It's a very even number, 1 billion. True. And we don't actually know how many unique active users there are in Bitcoin today. So I chose 1 billion as a marker for when we really start to go up. So let's go through this. So first, let's break Bitcoin down into some smaller chunks, right? So this was written in May, so things are a little bit off as far as like the total supply of Bitcoin circulation, but it's generally the same. So first, let's assume that 3.6 million Bitcoin have been lost or unrecoverable, including Satoshis, right? Now, the number could be higher. It could be lower. We don't know, right? But the estimate is it's slightly higher, around 4 million. But we'll go with 3.6 for various reasons. Now that leaves about 17.5 million Bitcoin, or about this many Satoshis, right? 17.5 million Bitcoin. We have 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. Now, distributed evenly to a billion people, that's only 1.75 million Satoshis. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So for a billion people to distribute all of the possibly available Bitcoin, we're talking 1.75 million Satoshis. Okay. So now if you go off how much Bitcoin's left, now this is a different metric, right? This is if you had 2.6 million on exchanges, which was at the time, if you added up how much Bitcoin was on exchanges, and 650,000 Bitcoin mined this cycle. So that would mean how much Bitcoin, if you were to mine all the days for every cycle, every block, you added them up, that would be about 650,000 for a full cycle for this 2024 onward cycle, right? Adding those two together, 3.25 million Bitcoin. Divide that by a billion people. You get 325,000 Satoshis. Okay, so now, what does this mean? I gave you two ranges. First, what happens when a billion people want to own effectively all of the possible supply that they can get? And then what happens when a billion people want to share the supply that theoretically people are offering or that is available in the coming next cycle, right? And that really generally, we're looking at just off demand. It's coming from exchanges, or the supply is coming from exchanges and from the newly minted Bitcoin. So now, what that leaves you with is a range between 1.75 million Satoshis and 325,000 Satoshis. So this tells me that if you want to be in the top percent, the elite, that you need to own at least 325,000 Satoshis this cycle. Right. Now, on the upper end of this, that would be around 1.75 million Satoshis to be in the top percent, the top elite. So let's take some averages, okay? So if you add 1.75 million Satoshis to 325,000 Satoshis divided by 2, you get just about a million Satoshis. keep your eye on a million Satoshis, right? So why are we saying this? Why does this even matter, right? What does this represent? So the average Bitcoin, between all the available Bitcoin and all the available Bitcoin to purchase, right? That's what we're looking at. And as an investor in Bitcoin, you're going to want to have your stake before everyone else gets theirs. And you need to know how much that is. And you need to get in at the best price. So like, how much do you need this cycle? Maybe how much do you need in the next cycle, right? The idea is, last cycle, you needed more. You needed more. This cycle, you need less. Now, why is that? The price of Bitcoin's changing, the adoption's changing, but the supply stays the same. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that can ever be created, right? And even the total 21 million won't be in circulation for some time. So let's get into this, right? As an investor, you should look at the price at which you're coming in. The price at which you're coming in for about 300,000 all the way to 1.75 million. And in between, perfectly in the middle, is 1 million Satoshis. So let's talk about 1 million Satoshis, right? 1 million Satoshis, right? There's about 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. 1 million Satoshis is 0.01 Bitcoin. Now, adoption with Bitcoin is spreading, right? Now, does that mean every single person is going to hold some minimum? No. Adoption means that people will use it in their businesses, in their daily lives, to back their, property into in their loans. But this adoption is coming out in so many different vectors that you start to wonder, what is the point, right? What is it? What point does that hockey stick start going up? So we're looking at basically ETFs, Bitcoin on exchanges, SBTC and stacks. We're seeing a lot of these forms of adoption that as time goes on, you'll see more ETF, you'll see more exchanges pop up, you'll see more integration with Bitcoin DeFi and SBTC, which is a way to use Bitcoin in Bitcoin DeFi. So that's going to be a lot of Bitcoin adoption. 1 billion Bitcoin users is pretty much guaranteed at least in 10 years. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing it, but it's probably guaranteed. Not financial advice. So reaching 1 million new users every month is my conservative expectation when all these things get turned on, right? So when SBTC is turned on, when all these ETFs and exchanges pop up, I heard countries are starting new exchanges as we speak. So this cycle, minimum, I would expect to see 50 to 100 million new users. But at the same time, we could even hit 1 billion. I wouldn't be surprised. But let's go conservative, right? Let's talk 50 million. What happens when you onboard 20 million people with $1,000 to spend in Bitcoin? What happens when you add another 10 million people with 5 to 10,000 to spend in Bitcoin? What happens when you add these ridiculously large numbers? Well, let's take an example. The goal is, let's see how much Bitcoin we can take. How much can we purchase? Well, if the price of Bitcoin is under 100,000, let's go on average 100,000. $1,000 will get you 0.01 Bitcoin. That's 1 million Satoshis. Now, if those, 30 million people eat up about 1,750,000 to 1.25 million Bitcoin, that's greater than the 650K to be mined over the next 4 years. How long until ETFs around the world accumulate the rest? Right? Like, just generally, how long? ETFs are a function Similar to how spot Bitcoin works and how demand works, it's just a much larger pool of people, right? And they need less understanding to purchase Bitcoin than your average spot Bitcoin purchaser. The expectation I have for this first 4 years is to accumulate over 1.9 million Bitcoin. Just the USA ETFs. As the marketing gets turned on, as Papa Fink, Papa Powell, all the papas start advocating for us. Hey, we even got Papa Schiff, tweeting pretty much every day, multiple times a day about Bitcoin, doing God's work, talking about Bitcoin to everyone and showing people why they should believe in Bitcoin. He might think that he's representing gold, but we know the truth. You can't lie to us. And when all these get turned on, guess what happens? When the marketing happens, when all the ETFs get turned on, they start putting out all this research. They said, hey, this is the best thing for you. Why aren't you doing this? Larry Fink will put out in his newsletters like, hey, Bitcoin mining. What a great way to save the environment. And then it's too late. So you have this cycle. So stop complaining. And as British Huddle says, you buy Bitcoin and you shut the fuck up. All right? It's peace.